Infinite Realities, the stay at home con. This is what, day three, and I have been looking forward to this one since we first announced it. This is Who Psychoanalyzes the Watchman, with master clinical psychologist and doctoral student at Georgia State University, Heather Ness-Maddox. Heather, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be talking about this.
I am excited to sit under the learning tree. So this is where everybody gets to find out that I just like looking at pretty pictures, and there are so many people smarter than me. So I'm going to hand this over to you now. So your show.
So because with this whole COVID quarantine thing, and I think we're doing what a lot of folks are doing, and binging or some new shows. And thank God that HBO was like, you know what, here, have a month free. So we got to go onto HBO and watch some shows that we've been wanting to watch for a while. And my top one was the Watchman series.
Okay.
And for one, I wanted to because it was a superhero show. And two, I had some people who had already seen it, and they were like, what are you doing watching anything else? I need you to watch this and like tell me everything that you think about it. So I went into it with my little notebook that I watch superhero movies with. And first of all, I'm in love with the show. I love the show. And I was like, I have to talk about it. And fortunately, you gave me the platform to do it. What I kind of wanted to talk about with you, Chris, was kind of one of the main themes that the show has. The series, to me, asks the question, what's the difference between, kind of broadly, between heroes and villains? And the villains and heroes that they kind of mix together, and then they're asking, what's the difference between these groups? They are showing the KKK, they're showing the police, they're showing vigilantes. So what makes them different from each other? And to answer that, I think they show how they're similar. And the way that they're similar is a mask.
Okay.
So in the show, every police officer wears a mask to cover up, their face so that they can stay protected against people who would harm a police officer. The main thing with a vigilante or a superhero, that they're wearing a mask to hide their identity. And then the show shows a lot with the KKK, Cyclops, the Cavalry, whatever it is that they wanted to call them. They all wear that hood. And so they're trying to make some comparisons there. And part of what I started thinking about is, okay, what does a mask do? And there's a few things. There's a few sides to what's going on with that. First of all, it gives us anonymity. We can hide our one side of ourselves. It allows us to be someone else than who we usually are in society. Like, take Angela. Her societal self is that she's just this mom who owns a bake shop. And that's what society sees her as. But really, she's a cop, but she's also has all of these unresolved issues. She has a lot of anger. She has a lot of aggression. And she's very powerful. And her mask allows her to be that person that she can't be out in society. Mm-hmm. So it allows us to have this different persona. And the thing about having a different persona is that it can go a couple of different ways when we put on this mask. Have you heard of, I'm sure that you have, but the Stanford prison experiment?
I have.
So the thing about that is, now I'm getting into kind of like what is a mask in kind of like a metaphorical sort of way. But you can think of it as, what are the different roles that we put on in society? Or what are the different hats that we wear? And in the Stanford prison experiment, the researchers were really looking at this idea of what happens when we take ordinary guys, and the people who were in the experiment were just like these college-age white guys in the 70s. And they were like, we're going to put them into different roles. Some of them are going to be, we're going to call them prison guards. Some of them are going to be the prisoner. What happens just by giving them this arbitrary role and having them act it out? And the guys who were given the role randomly of being prison guards, just, they got so aggressive towards those other people. Just putting on that hat, that mask, that role changed how they acted. They did things they wouldn't have normally done. One line that I kind of liked from the series, there's the character of the gamekeeper, and he's on this paradise planet with Adrian, and he wants to keep Adrian there, and he wears a mask, like an old-timey Lone Ranger kind of thing. And he has to, the mask makes him cruel in order to be a better warden, or maybe a possible villain, although not a good one, for Adrian. So just putting on this mask itself could change the way that person acts. So going back to the Stanford prison experiment, just putting on this role, and they got to wear like, those cop glasses, the aviator glasses. They got to carry around their nightsticks, different things like that. Giving them these different things made these ordinary guys who you could have been friends with at college, it made them act cruel. And it's because of, what people were getting at with this, it's because of the social expectations. Like, this is how we think we're supposed to act in this job. So
it sounds like the mask is, you're formally becoming the role at that point.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And so in the show, a cop will put on their mask, but and that's not what cops do in real life. But in real life, they put on the uniform and they put on the badge. And part of, I think, what they were getting at with the show was the danger of what could those social expectations be that you think you need to fulfill as a cop. And so it can go a couple of different ways. So like sometimes we put on, cosplayers know this. If you put on your costume and you kind of you have your mask on and you're in your costume, you don't actually become that character that you're cosplaying, but don't you feel a little bit different? You put on the mask, you could feel braver. You could feel a little bit more self-confident. You could feel, just a little, maybe like if you're a shy person, you might put it on and you're doing things at cons that, because you're in this cosplay, maybe you wouldn't normally do. And that's cool. That's a really awesome thing. So I guess where I'm going at, it's not necessarily a bad thing when we put on these social roles, but it's kind of goes back to, what do we as society say those social roles should be? So, for example, this kind of goes back to this one, he was a student of Freud, Carl Jung. He said everyone wears a mask all the time. It's our persona. It's what we show to the world. And it keeps society from seeing sometimes like our darker selves. And sometimes that can be a good thing. We show our persona to society, and that's how we function. We all get along together, and we're all really polite and things. We could put on a mask maybe to hide our hurt, which is something that Angela did in the show. I think it was Lori, she was saying to Angela, or Angela was saying, I wear my mask to protect myself. And Lori was like, right, from the trauma. And it got me thinking, like, sometimes we put on a mask when we're hurting, but we make out like we're all okay.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that helps us to
put on
function.
A brave face.
You put on a brave face, but maybe that helps you go to work. Maybe that helps you just get through your day until you can get to a place where you can take that mask off. The trick is taking it off and then working through the healing, but sometimes wearing that mask is a good thing. It depends on what the function is for it. So it's kind of like, well, we have these different roles in our society, and that's a good thing. We have to have these different roles in our society, but what do we expect from them? So that when someone puts on that role, when they put on that hat, the badge, and the uniform or whatever, how are we expecting them to perform? Because that expectation is going to have a lot of influence over what they do.
What about Lori? I know in Watchmen, the Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons work, she wears a mask, or at one point did, but in the series, she's one of the few law enforcement officers who does not wear a mask.
Right.
Is her mask not as obvious then?
So I don't know if they had like different rules for, I wasn't really sure. Like maybe the FBI didn't follow the cop rules.
Yeah, I think it was just Oklahoma, they said.
I think so.
For that state.
Yeah. So the thing about Lori is that she's very disillusioned with it, with the whole vigilante wearing the mask thing. One of my favorite lines from the movie, because I think I just paused, we just paused for a second and I like laughed, or like I just needed to be like, I can't believe they just said that. But when Lori in the Dr. Manhattan prayer booth, basically, and she's telling him a joke, and it has to do with the Watchmen, and she says, she introduces herself in the joke, but she says, but behind the heroes is someone else, but it's not a hero, it's a woman. I liked that because like Lori's role in the original Watchmen wasn't really to be a hero. It was to look good in a suit. Mm-hmm. and to be there for Dr. Manhattan. So Lori is, on one hand, she is still wearing a mask because she's snarky. She's kind of toughened up and hardened a little bit. But there's some shots that show her, like being in the Dr. Manhattan calling booth. She's lonely, is what it is. I don't think she has anyone else. She gets with this random guy that she brings with her from the FBI, but there's no emotional connection there. Owlman is never even mentioned, so I guess they didn't have a relationship too long. So I think she's trying to make out like, I'm fine, I don't need anybody else. But I think that is there underneath the surface.
Yeah, so I guess my read on it, because I read a lot of did you read the back matter that HBO.com published after every episode?
I didn't.
So so after every episode they would publish this, and I know that in the canon of the series, she changes her identity after the events of the comic to comedian before getting captured and then becoming a federal agent.
Interesting. That's weird.
Which I found that fascinating, that she swaps one mask out for another and then for another. So if you follow in that universe that they established in the show, mm-hmm. That's 3 symbolic masks that she's gone through now.
Right. And I think that makes sense for Lori, thinking of her kind of like in a meta sort of way as a character, because she didn't have much of an identity. So if the character goes through some different reiterations, to me that makes a little bit of a sense because there wasn't a strong handle. Like I can't see Rorschach ever changing out for a different metaphorical mask because he was a solid character. He knew who he was. He wasn't great, but he knew who he was. Lori didn't, as a character, there wasn't like a deep-rooted, this is who she is, to me.
No, you're right. She was at first defined by her mother.
Yes.
Her mother defined who she was.
Yes.
Then she's defined by the U.S. government. No, you're Doc Manhattan's girlfriend. That's what you are.
Yeah.
It's like those are, other people defined who she was.
Yeah. The other thing, one of the characters that I really liked from this show, and I liked because he got me. I expected him to be a certain way and he wasn't. But that was Looking Glass.
Right.
Right. Like I watched that and I was like, oh, he's clearly a neo-Confederate Nazi. And then he was a totally fine guy. And what's fun about that, kind of again in a meta way, so he's Looking Glass. And his mask is cool because it reminded me of Rorschach. But instead of the ink blot Rorschach test, it's just your own reflection. So what was fun with Rorschach's mask was the Rorschach ink blot test, where you have like these symmetrical, just vague images. You ask people, a psychologist will ask people to look at them. What do you see? And then kind of their answer says something about what's going on with them. With Looking Glass, you just see yourself, which personally I found that would be terrifying. If I'm talking to somebody and I'm just seeing myself, I start feeling insecure, which I'm sure was part of the reason why he did it. But then I started thinking a little bit more about it. And the story wasn't written for this. The series wasn't written because it came out before. But I'm kind of glad that I watched it during this whole COVID thing, because we're all wearing the respiratory mask.
Looking for mine.
And so it's kind of like we kind of have a projection test going on right now. What are our gut reactions when we see someone in a mask? When we see someone else in a mask? And unfortunately, there's been these situations where there was an African American doctor who was helping people and he was wearing a mask and he got arrested because someone's gut reaction seeing a Black man in a mask was that he was hiding something, or was it up to no good or something, which kind of goes back to a different quote from the show. Hooded Justice's son said, people who wear masks, they're dangerous. We should be scared of them because they're hiding something. Or there's been this aggression against people, Chinese Americans who've been wearing masks. They must be spreading the virus. Mm-hmm. So with a projection test where you're looking at this image, it's not about what is right, like what the image actually is. It's about what you think about it. So what you see says more about yourself than what you're looking at. So it's not about the African American doctor who was wearing a mask and what was real. It's not about the other people wearing masks. It's about when you see someone else and this is your gut reaction to it. It says something. It says more about them. And so if you're looking at Looking Glass and you're seeing yourself, or you see whatever kind of image as you're in that interrogation pod, your reaction is what's important. That's what says things about you. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. And I'm also, so there's two conflicting interpretations then. If I'm wearing the mask, there's what I think the mask is projecting to you. But that
Yes.
would be in direct opposition of what you're interpreting the mask to be.
Yes, absolutely. It could be what could be going on. Like you put on this mask, and it could make you feel a certain way. Like I think, like with Hooded Justice, it finally made him feel like he could have his aggression out, and he could take his anger out on the world, on bad guys, when he couldn't before in just regular society. He would have been, grossly punished for that. And somehow other people looked at him wearing this black hood that Klans people did use, and having the noose around his neck, and they saw a white guy who was being a hero. It's interesting. It's not necessarily what is true. It's what do you think that you see.
Right.
Yeah. What I thought was also kind of interesting, and I don't know if you caught this, but so the Calvary take on Rorschach's mask, right? And they talk about him in his journal, and so they're kind of like putting him up on a pedestal. At a certain point in the show, though, when you kind of connect the whole Cyclops thing to the Calvary now, they show the Cyclops eye symbol, but the eye it's Ozymandias's yeah, symbol off of his breastplate.
I did not notice that.
Around it is Dr. Manhattan's atom from his yeah. So this whole Cyclops symbol, they're putting Rorschach up on a pedestal, but very casually, the creators of the show also are like, they're putting all of the vigilantes up on. So they're kind of asking us to question, what is your definition of a hero? And they do that from the very beginning, because Angela's hero is the chief of police. That's her friend. But then she finds out stuff about him, like, I can't believe, this was my friend. This was the person that she looked up to. But then it gets like, she doesn't know she can't put him in a clear-cut box of good or bad.
But she's not in a clear-cut box either, because she puts on the mask. She beats confessions out of people. Like, she does in that mask that are not good and not okay. Right.
And same thing with Hooded Justice. And this does go back to and like, I'm on his side pretty much all the time. Because I'm like, this guy had like the worst, and he kept getting duped by people who pretended to care about him. But in the graphic novel, and he stopped the comedian assaulting the original Spectre, but he wasn't nice to her.
No,
he was very victim blaming in the moment.
He tells her, cover yourself.
Yeah. So still not a cool dude. He wasn't there for his son. Who knows what he was doing in between the time where he was being Hooded Justice and then he shows up in the show. I guess being obsessive, but like, and like he has, for good reason, this vendetta against Cyclops. But then he uses their own methods against the chief of police. So you do start getting into these murky areas of, well, if he uses the same methods that they do, is he just as bad as them? If Angela beats the crap out of people to get confessions, how is she a better person? And it's murky, and I think that's what they wanted. We try to have these clear-cut boxes of good guy, bad guy, hero, villain, but it asks us to break those down. And again, it kind of goes back to like, what are our social expectations of people that we put onto others?
Well, and I think I was one of those people. I've talked to you about this, that I was initially against the existence of the show.
Yeah.
Because I whatever reason, I just didn't think that Watchmen needed a sequel. But what hooked me was they thematically got it, because the Watchmen graphic novel, is complicated and people do complicated things that are murky. So that's why I liked it. And I think, like good literature, you can see real life reflected in that.
Yeah. One thing that this is getting away from the idea of a mask, but one thing that I really liked, and you know, like what I'm doing, what my research interest in, it's stories. I want to know, you know, how we understand stories. What do stories mean? And throughout the throughout the show, and you see Adrian on this paradise planet area with these clones, and at one point the gamekeeper, you know, is talking about his creator, Dr. Manhattan, and he's like, "Why isn't heaven good enough?" You know, his father, his creator, just took off and left. And then Adrian is on trial, and to me, it was like if humans were able to put God on trial, this is what it would look like. And I bet that I bet he wouldn't say anything either. He would probably just like like I don't have to explain myself. And there's no answer to the question for the gamekeeper why heaven wasn't good enough. That's never settled for him. And it's never settled why a creator would create this whole paradise and leave it and all of these different things. But if we kind of take a step back, people have these questions, these universal quandaries, whether or not it has to do with anxiety or just like, you know, big questions about life and death and whatever, that we can't answer. Like we try to really hard to answer them, but there's no definitive answer. And what I like about Watchmen and what I like about stories is that I think stories are how we make sense of the world. And so it made me think like the people who came up with the Watchmen series, they're putting in these very relatable, universal questions of what is good, who can I trust, maybe questions about life and death, questions about religion or whatever, but they're using stories and superheroes in these bonkers situations that we come up with this guy throwing squids onto a whole town. We come up with these crazy stories, but they're crazy because that lets us work through these things. And so I mentioned Carl Jung with the idea of a mask, but he also came up with the idea of what's called the collective unconscious. And it's just these human universal experiences and anxieties that we go through. And he says that they keep coming up in our myths and our fairy tales. And I think they keep coming up in other stories as well. And we kind of see it a little bit better with superhero stories. They help us figure out the world.
And then you get into Joseph Campbell, where you tie these masks into the universal archetypes. And
exactly.
My non-professional, because again, my credentials are zero.
Man, I'm a student, you know.
Yeah, you college professor. You've been
That's
in
true.
it.
That's true. It depends on what role I'm in, right? Whether or not I give my cell phone credibility. Gosh, wow.
No, but
Who psychoanalyzes herself?
The beauty of the series, the beauty of the comic is that they use the mask, and the archetypes. They don't just invert them, because inverting them is easy. They spin them into something new and manage to say something new about the archetypes that we've seen before.
Yeah, I do think so. And it's something that we all relate to, and we kind of going back to those clear-cut boxes, we want to have it. Like I do this too. Like I take BuzzFeed personality quizzes to figure out what Starbucks order I am, because it helps me define myself.
Yeah, no.
If we could think about it in terms of this archetypes, like, okay, the healer, I get that. That's what, what role we play in our lives, role playing, whatever. it goes back to those clear-cut boxes and those expectations.
Well, we're coming to the end of our 30 minutes. I can't thank you enough for wearing your academic mask with us today.
Thank you. I am so pleased to be here and that I got to be upon that list of all of those incredible people who are going to be speaking with you guys this week. That
Look,
was
I've
awesome.
told other people when we hatched the idea, we made a list of people we wanted to spend time with, and you were on that list. It was,
Oh,
and also you have a standing invitation to be on that list. I hope you know that.
I do, and I come up with ideas constantly. So
You
like,
cannot harass me enough for that. All right. Anything you need, we can accommodate. You are an amazing member of our community.
thank you. Appreciate you
Awesome.
guys so much.
Well, where can people find you? You're super psych.
Super Psych. So they can find me on Twitter at super_psych without the H, PSYC. On Facebook, if you do at Super Psychology, that page will come up. And then Instagram, it's at super_psych, PSYCH. Well,
And you have your books for sale, right?
I do. You can find on Amazon, since that's a socially distant way to do it. You can look up Broken Heroes, an unofficial guide to the trauma and psychology of Marvel's Defenders. So I go episode by episode through the first season of Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and yes, even Iron Fist.
It's as awesome as y'all think it is. So, Heather, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. This was great.